Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. If you're a law student or just totally fascinated by how society and the law evolve together, you literally cannot skip this one. Today we're diving into the landmark case of Dave Kishan v. Ram Kishan. We're going to explore the fascinating and honestly kind of messy collision between ancient traditional personal law and modern statutory law.
Here is our game plan for today. We're walking through the facts of the case, the core legal issue, the rules and statutes at play, the arguments from both parties, the court's reasoning, and we'll wrap it all up with the final judgment.
All right, part one, the facts of the case. Let's set the stage and look at exactly what kicked off this massive family feud.
So picture this. We've got a joint Hindu family. The Karta, who is the legal manager of the joint family, a guy named Ram Kishan, decides to mortgage and eventually sell off ancestral family property. And his reason for doing this? He wanted to raise funds for the marriages of two minor girls in the family, Vimla and Shanti. Well, another family member, Dev Kishan, was absolutely not having it. He filed a suit to block the sale entirely, arguing the Karta had completely overstepped his authority by selling shared assets to fund child marriages, which of course are illegal.
Moving to part two, the core legal issue. This brings us right to the absolute heart of the matter.
It all boils down to this one really interesting question. Does the sale of joint Hindu family property by a Karta to fund a child marriage, an act strictly prohibited by law, actually constitute a valid legal necessity? In other words, can the rest of the family be legally forced to swallow the loss of their property for an act the state literally considers a crime?
Part 3. Rules and Statutes. To see how the court untangled this puzzle, we have to look at the massive clash of laws happening in the background.
In one corner, weighing in with centuries of tradition, we have the Mitakshara school of Hindu law. Now, you probably remember this from your studies, but under this school, a Karta's power to sell family property is limited to three very specific scenarios: apatkale, meaning times of distress; kutumbarthe, for the benefit of the family; and dharmarthe, which covers pious purposes or legal necessity.
But in the opposite corner, we have a total legal roadblock: the Child Marriage Restraint Act of 1929, widely known as the SARDA Act. This is a modern statutory law that explicitly and strictly criminalizes the marriage of minors. So we have an ancient religious duty crashing head-on into a strict criminal statute.
Section 4. Arguments of the parties. With the rules set, let's head into the courtroom and see how both sides built their cases.
Our defendant, the Karta Ram Kishan, leaned heavily into tradition. He argued that providing for a daughter's marriage is a deeply rooted pious obligation. To him, he was simply fulfilling his social and religious duty as the family manager, making it a textbook legal necessity that binds the whole family. But the plaintiff, Dev Kishan, flipped the script brilliantly. He argued that for a necessity to be recognized by a modern court, it must first and foremost actually be legal. He pointed out that you absolutely cannot use the law to facilitate a crime by selling property to fund a direct violation of the SARDA Act.
Part 5. Reasoning of the court. This is the really juicy part, how the Rajasthan High Court actually unraveled this dilemma to prioritize public policy over archaic traditions.
The bench delivered a massive win for the rule of law. They clarified that while the marriage of a daughter has traditionally been viewed as a legal necessity, the definition of necessity is not frozen in time. It has to evolve with statutory changes. Just look at this phenomenal quote from their reasoning. Legal necessity cannot include an act that is a crime under the law of the land. It's common sense, right? You literally cannot claim a legal necessity for an illegal act.
Furthermore, the judges completely dismantled the Karta's claim that this sale was somehow for the benefit of the family. They reasoned that the Child Marriage Restraint Act exists precisely to prevent social evil. So if you're engaging in a transaction aimed at promoting that exact social evil, you're bringing legal risk and social harm to your family. That totally invalidates any claim that it was a benefit or a pious act.
And the court didn't let the buyer off the hook either. They took a super strict stance on the alienee, the person buying the property. The court held that anyone purchasing joint family property has a strict duty to make bona fide inquiries into why the property is actually being sold. Because the illegality of child marriage is a matter of public statute, the buyer is legally presumed to know the purpose of the sale is illegal. So if you're funding a legal violation, you completely lose all your protection as a good faith purchaser.
Finally, Section 6. The final judgment. Let's look at exactly how the Rajasthan High Court wrapped up this monumental case.
The court ruled definitively in favor of the plaintiff, Dev Kishan. They declared that the alienation, the sale of the joint family property, was completely null and void, meaning the rest of the family didn't have to honor it. Taking it a step further, they categorized the debt incurred for the child marriages as an illegal debt. This explicitly means a carta has zero authority to sell off ancestral property to discharge that kind of liability.
Ultimately, this judgment is a massive deal because it reinforces a crucial principle for us as law students. A carta's powers are completely and unconditionally subject to the modern statutory framework of the country. Statutory laws, like the SARTA Act, will always override conflicting interpretations of personal law or traditional religious duties. Basically, tradition is never an excuse for criminality.